Hello, my AJ family. Let me welcome you to Strategy Sunday. Yes, right here with Strategic Educational Consultancy Services. And of course, we're in the last week of Joyful Jolly June. And so this is our last Sunday where we are presenting you information content on special needs in the Jamaican classroom context. And so for this Strategy Sunday, we have with us content creator Miss Caddabra Bernard Brown, who is a school psychologist in Indiana. And of course, I am Karla Boswell-Lewis, a curriculum specialist in Jamaica, of course, and I will be doing the voice recording for this Sunday. And so the title of this Sunday Strategy Sunday episode is named Assessment Tips for Special Needs Students. Let's dig right into it. So we know that there are traditional assessment struggles that students go through, especially special needs students. So they do not have all the same characteristics as the typical students. And so if you give them traditional assessment, they will struggle. Why will these students struggle? Remember that they all have specific learning difficulties. They also have intellectual difficulties. They may not all be able to understand written communication or oral communication. They may have attention problems, anxiety problems, lack of stamina, among many other challenges. And so when we go to do assessment for special needs students, there are some things that we need to look at educators. One, we need to look at the students' learning needs. What is the type of what is the type of learning difficulty that they have? How is it that they learn best? Do we have an auditory learner? Do we have a visual learner? Then we may need to look at what are their strengths. What are their weaknesses? What do they do well in? What do they not do well in? And what are the circumstances that cause them not to do well? And then we may need to look at the strategies that have been working with this student. So this student doesn't read well. What strategy do you have in place as the teacher that have been working for this student, and you want to look at that? And you may also want to look at the strategies that have not worked in the past time. And so as you set your assessment, this is the focus that you are taking when you deal with these students, when you go to plan and also to execute the assessment. Now, one of the biggest tip, as suggested by Mrs. Bernard Brown, is that we must minimize paper and pencil written assessments. Remember, these are special needs students and they struggle with special and specific learning difficulties. And so when we're assessing them, we have to think about that, and we have to minimize as best as possible the pencil and written assessments that we give to them, because we do not want to frustrate them. We don't want them to become anxious. We don't want them to become angry. We don't want them to become bored. We don't want them not to complete the assessment, because the assessment, as Ms. Tanisha Thompson shared with us last week, that it is crucial for you to be able to get the data and then to analyze the data and use it for instruction. And so as you look at assessing students with special needs, what are some ways in which as educators we can assess these special needs students? One such is to do conferences. And we do know that conferences, it's a one-on-one approach. It can also be a group approach, but it depends on the specific learning disability again, and how comfortable the students are working with each other. So this is a good opportunity for the students who are shy and they may get anxious if they stand in front of the class or become flustered. And so you may want to use the one-on-one approach, that is between the teacher and the student, so that you are able to get what you need to get from them, so you understand the concepts that they understand or don't understand, and so that you can plan to meet this need after assessment. Now during the session, what will happen in the conference setup is that the student will explain the concept to the teacher. And so by explaining the concept to the teacher, the aim now is for the teacher to understand the student's level of understanding and knowledge. Because if it is that you ask the child to explain to you or to demonstrate to you some verbs, then of course those are action words, and so the students may jump, they may skip, they may clap, they may laugh, different things that they may be doing, right? And so this will help you to understand that, okay, he doesn't understand this the concept of verbs, or he doesn't understand the concept of pronouns, or whatever it is that you are doing with the student. It will help you. All right, so that's one way in which we can look at assessing these students with special needs. Another way is for observation. And this, of course, is better in a small group setting, because it will be difficult for the teacher to be observing 20-30 students. So you want to maybe observe 4 or 5 students at a time. You watch them work or to solve a problem without your help. So you're not giving them any help at all. You go and you look and you are observing what the students are doing, what is what's the language that they're using, how is it that they're solving the problem, and you look for the level of understanding of the concept as they solve the problem. You may also want to look at the overall approach. What do they give? Is planning evident? Do they seem aware of other strategies that can be utilized? Or are they just sitting and, baffling over it, or they're having mixed results, or they're having mixed approaches, or there's a little confusion that's going on within the group because one person understands it another way and the other one has another way. So this also helps you. And of course, when you do your observation, you should have an observation checklist that you're checking off based on what you have given, the assessment that you have given to the students. You are checking off to see if they have mastered, if they understood what is it that you need to do at the end of the assessment. Now another one is questioning. Yes, questioning. You want to do this in a small group setting once more, or a one-on-one instruction level. What you are doing, you are using open-ended questions. All right, so this is where you're asking them and they're going to be responding to you, in which more than one correct answers are possible. We always say to our students that there is no one correct definite answer. If it's a definition, there are different ways in which you can define. If it's for you to explain a concept, there are different ways that you can explain the concept to arrive at the answer. Now, you may want to ask the students to explain their answer. This can be done for both the open-ended and the closed-ended question. You may want to ask, how do you know that? Why did you say yes? So the open-ended, you're asking, how do you know? They're going to explain to you. In the closed-ended questions, why did you select yes? They're going to explain to you. Or why did you select no? They will also be explaining to you. And if it is that you use any other words based on what the assessment lineup that you have, then they should be able to say to you why this is so. You may also want to use the student's response to ask them another question. So you're digging deep into what is it that they know, into their knowledge, into their skill base, everything that they should possess for that concept or for that skill. You are digging into it by doing follow-up questions. You want to ask the students also to give you examples of what they are trying to explain. And they can even be asked to draw or find a picture that will support what is it that they are trying to explain. And educators, we know that this also works outside of a special needs approach. When students are answering a question, if they are not sure about what they have written, give an example, and this may help to clear up the whatever it is that they are trying to explain. The next one is that you want to do self-reflection with the students, because the aim is, even though they are special needs, you want them to be self-reflective learners. You want them to be able to connect with prior knowledge that they have. You may also want to give them a prompt, right? And you have that outline for them, and it could also be a written or an oral response that you're doing while you're administering self-reflection to the students. Another one, educators, is for you to allow students to explain multiple choice responses. So yes, we know that multiple choice questions can be confusing for some students, right? But you want to give students the option to explain. While it may not be used for all the questions, it will help you, the teacher, to understand their level of thinking, right? So that is another way in which it can be done. And you may also want to ensure that you're using alternative assessments. And remember, I would have discussed alternative assessments in the month of February, so you can go back to that video and you can watch it, and you can learn about alternative forms of assessments. And so here it is that you may want to give them journals. It may be that you want to give them artwork. You may want to give them drama stories to act out. You may want them to dance, to make up a song, a creative piece, a dub poet, a song, a poem, anything it is that you may be thinking of that is outside of the norm. You may want to give this to the students so that they are better able to score good grades. And also whatever you are giving them is going to be aligned to the content, so it's not taken away from what you have taught them, but it is now going to go in and plug out and allow them to demonstrate to you what they understood from the content and the concepts that they have been given. Now, of course, we know that while we have the different ways in which we can utilize assessments, that we can get assessments done with special needs students, you do know that from time to time there's a formal testing setting, right? And what do we do in this? What is the approach? We know that this is challenging for special needs students, very challenging. What it does, they may have low reading levels. It may bring on anxiety. They may have difficulty sustaining attention and focusing, and they may get tired easily because of the pressure that is now on the brain. And so what you want to do, even though you're going to be giving them this formal testing, or what we may refer to as standardized testing, you want to provide accommodations and modifications. Educators, we cannot be hard fast on what we do in the classroom with the students, especially because we're dealing with students with special needs. You want to allow extra time or to remove time restrictions from them. You may also want to allow students to take breaks during testing, and that is permitted, because once you are in a controlled environment where the students, they are away from their textbooks, they are away from what they do, and you monitor what is it that they are going to be doing, of course you can allow them to take breaks in between. You may also want to read the test instructions for a student. And I can tell you, educators, that I have experienced this. We, at the high school that I teach, and I supervise a particular grade level, when these students come into us, they are usually not the best performing students. So they come in with, of course, their special needs. They cannot read well, or they're not numerate, many things that are happening to them. And I remember we have to give them a test, right? What we refer to as a pre-test, a diagnostic test, to see really where they are. Because even though they come to us and the ministry has guidelines as to the grades that they have received, you want to see truly where they are at when they come into you. And we tend to document that as we go along throughout the school year, to see where they have moved from a primer level or a pre-primer level to a level 1 or a level 2 or grade 1 or grade 2 in their reading. And when the students did a test, Without it being read to them, they performed poorly. But when we gave them a test and we allowed the teachers to read to the students, these students who the day before they got low marks on a test because no one read the test for them, these students were getting good marks. And so you may want to do that to meet the needs of our learners. You want to also read specific parts of the test for the students, parts where you know that they will have a difficult to understand. You may want to read it slowly with emphasis, with the pronunciation, enunciations, the gestures, whatever it is that you need to, you may have to do that for them. And you also want to allow students to dictate answers to a scribe. So yes, you may provide them, they may not be able to spell well or to write legibly, and so you want them to tell the scribe what is it that they need to write specifically. You may also want to allow students to take the test in a separate room, so away from the noise or away from the other students, because some students will tell you that when they go into a room to do a test, they become flustered. But if they are by themselves, away from everyone, they tend to get a different level of focus. And so we want to accommodate that and to modify as we go along. You may also want to allow students to complete the test across multiple sessions. So instead of the child sitting down for an hour and 20 minutes to complete a test, or for 2 hours, you may want to break it apart. Separate the test. Today they do pages 1 and 2, tomorrow they do pages 3 and 4, and that will help them relaxing the brain so that there is no cognitive overload and there is no undue anxiety or pressure on these students, because remember, they are suffering with a specific learning disability and you don't want to add another level of stress to them. You also want to allow students to provide oral instead of written answers. And so when they provide that, you mark them right away and you document what is it that you need to document. And of course, you want to reduce the number of questions. So I've seen teachers who in a class setting they have to do differentiation instruction for maybe 3 sets of students, and so set 1 that's a little bit more advanced, they may get 10 questions. Set 2 that is just advanced, they may get 6 or 7, and those who are not advanced, they may get 3 or 4 questions. It's not taking away from what you want them to understand or what you want to get from them as it relates to their knowledge or the concept or the skill. But what it does, you are taking it in bits and pieces. You are taking it from a broad brush approach. You are taking it from the point that based on the questions that you ask them as the teacher, you must be able to garner the data that you need to get from the students. And you may also want to allow cue sheets for tests. Now the final tips as we close out today, as we look at the different ways in which we can assess students with special needs, you want to I want to encourage you, or Mrs. Bernard Brown would want to encourage you that, it is okay to scaffold assessments. What do we mean by that? It is okay for you to guide the student throughout the assessment, whether it is that you are going to read the questions, you're going to ask them the questions. If they ask you something, you may want to jog their memory to something specific. Nothing is wrong with that, because you're not telling them the answer, but you're helping them to go back to reflect and to remember what they have done. It's okay for you to prompt and lead questions, that is acceptable at times. And if you do not teach language, literature, or communication, great for understanding of concepts and ignore grammar and spelling. Yes, grammar and spelling is important, but you are marking for concepts, especially if you're outside of the English language. It is the concepts that you want to get from the students. And by the way, when we look at standardized testing in the Caribbean, they don't always mark the students for grammar and spelling. Once you can understand what is on the paper, the student should get some marks from that. So educators, I just want to thank you so much for tuning in, for listening to this insightful presentation on assessment tips for students with special needs. I trust that this was informative and that this is something that you can utilize in your classroom as we have the final week of school too here in Jamaica. I know in America and other parts of the world that the school year has ended already. But for us in Jamaica, this is the final week. While this may not be helpful as you go to teach, but it will be helpful as you plan for the new school year and as you sit back and reflect on what had happened and how you could be better. I'm trusting that this will help you because remember, in our classrooms, it is inclusive education that we give in most regards because of course parents don't really some parents don't feel comfortable removing their students from mainstream education to take them to special needs school, or they may not have the resources to do so. And so as educators we have to be knowledgeable of these things so that when we meet upon them in our classroom, we know exactly how to deal with it. If this video was informative and interesting, why not go ahead and like the video? If it is that you want to ask questions, post them in the chat below, or if you want to just give us a thumbs up, a feedback, go ahead and do so. Educators, remember also to share the link with someone, to share this video with someone. It could be a parent, another colleague, anyone who may need some information on special needs education, especially in the Jamaican classroom context. And I always encourage you to subscribe to the channel if you have not yet subscribed. Thank you to all those who have been watching and subscribing, my Facebook family, my LinkedIn family, the Instagram family, and to you, the community of YouTubers. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the week and see you on Thursday when we do our final analysis Thursday with the bubbly yet educated and fun-loving Yolande Fife-Fagan. I am Karla Boswell-Lewis, Director for Strategic Educational Consultancy Services, where my only mission is to empower you educators. It is Tata for Strategy Sunday in the joyful jolly month of June. Thank you.